Okay, I'm back. It took actually a little bit longer than I had suspected. I'm not sure if I did something wrong in the process or if it was just a little slower than usual. But anyway, we're here for the second session of 2-4, and you get to see a pretty decent hand. One thing that you missed was that this player three-bet another of our under-the-gun bets. So we're really gonna try to tighten up a little bit what we're raising under the gun, which would be when he's in the big blind, to the point that I'm probably going to even exclude a number of pairs, so that if he does that again, we can get a bunch of money from him because we will have a hand. As tight as we're playing, he still thinks that he can make moves on us because we're making moves on him somehow. Or maybe he thinks that because we're so tight, but it's going to be the point soon that we can definitely go for it with value. Like I say, I'm going to remove probably fives and below from my typical raising range, maybe sixes, and I'm actually tempted to add in like an ace queen or an ace jack even type of hand. Hopefully we'll get action from one of these players. Basically what we're betting on is whether or not he has a king, which obviously we don't care about. So he is drawing dead now, and that certainly makes us happy. We should certainly get respect on our three bets now. I know no one watching this video would make that kind of a mistake. That was just a horrible play with the king 10. The open wasn't necessarily bad, but when one of the tightest players at the table three bets you and you've already gotten one call, you just have to let it go. Here again with the ace king, I would be going all the way with it against someone with that short a stack, especially when they just came in. I'm checking here, hoping to induce a bluff. Instead we split the pot, having the same hand. here with the A7. I bet with the open-ended draw on the flop, figuring out I had a pretty decent number of outs between the draw and then if the ace hit, I would have thought that my hand would have been good a decent amount of the time. So I was happy to go ahead and bet there. And then when I hit the turn, that obviously makes my chances of having the best hand, cuts them in half because I didn't hit any of my outs. So I went ahead and checked. I probably would have folded to a bet just because the amount of times I hit there aren't high enough to justify calling. But I was certainly happy to get a free showdown. And also, I wasn't gonna bet that river unless I hit. And it was possibly a mistake by him to just check. Although I guess he rarely gets called by a hand that doesn't beat a pair of sixes. So it was probably okay on both parts. I have expect that we're going to get 3-bet by Magistrate, but we did not. Last time we took this line against this opponent, we c-bet. I'm actually going to do the same thing here because I have quite a few outs again. Here with the short stack player, we just don't have enough equity to continue there. I will check behind, take my free card, and here I'll likely call a bet. It's possible that he had the flush draw and he was looking to check raise the turn, but I think it's just as likely that he didn't, but is going to try to represent it. However, I also don't think that he's calling with that many worse hands. And he hit the straight instead. That's interesting. I obviously didn't put him on that draw. I probably should have 3-bet that pot, but I looked at Andy's raising range and just did not like what I saw. I can't fold for that small a bet. Seeing how that hand turned out, we definitely should have given more action, or took in the more standard line pre-flop. I was just worried that Andy was a tight player. But I guess he was probably opening up given the amount of people left at the table. I'll go ahead and try to pull up another table. We were playing against this player earlier. Okay, this is a different player that's come in. 20, I'm just going to call. I'm wondering if it's becoming more common for people to just bet when they just come straight into a pot like that. Okay, that was not well played. It'd be nice if we had something similar happen this hand. And we kind of do. Given that we're out of position here, I'm going to go ahead and re-raise again. We've also got a pretty horrible image, so I'll re-raise. Make it about 165, and we obviously won't be folding to a shove. You can make an argument for just calling there on the basis that we fold all the hands that we really want to come in, and we end up in a coin flip or worse. The problem with that argument is that our image is just so bad there that I don't think he folds jacks. I don't think he folds. I'm not sure that he folds tens. And here again, he may fold ace king, ace queen. Well, ace queen, we'd love him not to fold. So we can actually get folds from some of the hands that we are good against, and possibly get action from some of the hands that we don't. Again, that's largely because our image was just shot to hell from the last couple of hands we played. We're raising the king jack from the button. And this isn't a great flop. We'll just go ahead and let it go for now. Take note, he makes a min bet. He's doing a lot of betting on semi-dangerous looking boards. Given that we look kind of crazy on this table, I'm folding the ace jack under the gun there, getting a little bit closer back to the style that, started the video off for us. On the the sixes hand. I really shouldn't have taken the line that I did, because I had no reason to think that this guy was making a move other than the fact that he was, you know, doing this stupid thing to post out of position. But I had no reason other than that to think that he was a weak player or that he was making a move. So I was out of line. I should have just let go of the sixes post flop when I didn't hit my set. And clearly he would have paid us off if we had hit. Flatbusted seems to like making these little bets too. Maybe we'll get to see a showdown and see what he has. We do. He has top pair with a weak kicker. Now here is an interesting spot. You could make an argument for calling or for re-raising, for 3-betting. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet, just because I like, if I think it's close, I'd like to err on the side of aggression, but I don't necessarily think this is always the optimal play. My justification for that is quite simply that it seemed far too aggressive for a better hand. And I'm sorry for not talking through my thought process as I was doing that. But most of the time, I think a better hand is likely to... It isn't likely to play back in that sort of fashion. It looked like... We looked a lot like we were trying to make a move. So then when he just shuts us down, it makes me think that we can call a lot thinner, because he's trying to knock us off the hand. The only hands that he could have that we're really worried about there are jacks, queens, kings, aces. And he's going to love that board with any of those hands. So why is he shoving all the money in? Why isn't he trying to extract more from us on later streets? The board's paired, so he can't really even be worried about us sucking out. It looks a lot more like the type of hand that he had. If he had just called, it would have been a difficult spot to decide what to do on the turn, whether we continue going with it. Actually, going back to the call, I think he takes the same line he took with ace-king a number of times, too. Because, again, he wants to get us off the hand, and he figures that he has outs. Well, he would have had 3. So, a lot of times, he's got 2 or 3 outs there when we're... A lot of the time he has 2 or 3 outs against us there. And the times that we're wrong, we actually have 5 or more outs against him. So even if they were dead even for frequency, I don't think they are. But even if they were, just in the extra amount we make from our extra outs, which obviously wasn't factored in the decision at all, and I'm just kind of justifying myself after the fact there. But it's a valid point. We had more outs against him than he, with the hands we were losing with, than he had against us with the hands that he was losing with. The 7 deuce, it's not even worth calling for implied odds, especially given that this player is going to be fairly tight in his calling range. Now that the table's seen that I defend with ace-10 and re-raise with it, I won't re-raise that light for a while now. 'm pretty sure that our hand is likely good here again. Hmm. $3.26. I really want to call this, but I'm gonna do it. Okay. Well, it definitely feels good to be right. That was a really marginal call, obviously. Wow. I was expecting him to have at least some kind of pair there. Okay, I don't think we can call that light again, by any means. And actually, if we're in a similar spot now, I'm likely to just call behind him. Going back, I really suck at talking through my thinking sometimes. When I finally decided to make the call there, what was running through my head was just that I was running out of time, so I couldn't explain it very well. But because he saw us playing the ace-10 the hand before, it looks like we clearly can't have an overpair, a big overpair there. Because if we're re-raising ace-10, we're re-raising, big overpairs almost always. He probably expected us to re-raise with eights. When we didn't, that flop came and he expected that we were just making a move with an ace-x hand that missed. He also actually had reasonable equity against, the hands that could call him, the pairs, because he had overcards more than likely, and he had the second nut flush draw. So I don't fault his play. I can find faults in ours, even though we made money. I don't know that we necessarily had made the best play there. Here with the aces, I'm just going to continue building the pot. If there hadn't been the flush draw there, I would have thought it a bit better maybe to go ahead and check that turn, because like I've said previously, I like trying to check raise when I hit to balance the times that I'm gonna check fold when I miss on, well, c bet and then check fold. Mixing the two in means that you can c bet a lot more often and correctly fold a lot more often. Ace deuce offsuit just isn't enough equity wise. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead, I'll finish up these orbits, and actually I take that back. I forget that we are a little bit delayed in this video, so I'll do another couple orbits and then we'll finish up this video. If you recall, at the beginning of the second part, we were down, I'd say, just shy of 2/3 of buy. We were down about $250. I'd say that because I'm going to feed it into doing Poker Tracker review in a bit. Actually, since I'm going to include that, I will finish up after this orbit. Here we're just going to check with the Jack 5. There's no reason to get fancy. And he's not going to believe that we have an ace. And here I will call a bet or make a bet with the rivered straight. There's no reason to think he has a flush. So we can get paid off there. Given that we don't have anything here and we've shown some incredibly light calls, that board hits so many drawing hands, we're just going to check. And we'll just get rid of it. If I had the ace queen, or if I had a heart there, I would be much more inclined to go with the hand, especially if it was the ace of hearts, obviously. With the ace of hearts, I would suspect that we would be pretty close to the favorite on the flop there, depending on how often. I don't know if you can ever have ace king there, so if he never has ace king, then we're definitely the favorite. And I'm not sure how many suited connectors he has that he plays. Go ahead and, like I said, I'll wrap this up. We'll be folding the king deuce under the gun. And then here we're done. Okay, I'll be back in just a moment with Poker Tracker. Okay, I'm back. I've got Poker Tracker loaded up here. You can see we played just under 250 hands. Actually, that may not be quite accurate. Sorry, I should have done this before. I always forget to force import at the very end of the session. We played just over 250 hands, made about a buy-in and a half for 28 big bets per 100, which is obviously extremely great. All of that and then some came from, the really iffy hands this kind of questionable calls we made. So the results are great for this session. We did actually make some mistakes, perhaps. Um, if we'd had reads on that player to know that those plays were valid, you could maybe make another argument for it. If I had seen the hands that we just saw happen against somebody else, and then I came and played against him, I'd probably think that those calls were more reasonable than I do, just because I don't like not having information. I made decisions without the right information. We can see, looking at our biggest wins, of course, we've got the ace-10 and the eights hands, where, again, we flop top pair on a paired board with the ace-10. I think that's pretty reasonable. Let's look at it. So, again, we had 3-bet, we flop top pair. The only question is, how many hands does he call with? Does he call the 3-bet with that beat us, versus how many of those hands does he re-raise? An aware player probably calls with a decent number of them because he's in position. So it's more likely that he has us beat here than if we had been on the button and he was in the cutoff, for instance. I think more often a lot of the hands that beat us will re-raise in those spots. But still, he can definitely have ace-king a lot here. He can definitely have under pairs a decent amount of the time. And I still think that it's very hard to believe that he's going to be trying to force us off the hand if he has aces on a paired flop like that. There's not even a flush draw. I don't see any way that I actually think this is a fairly reasonable call. It's a big call, but it's fairly reasonable because it's hard to put him on what he was trying to represent. So here with the eights, this is quite a bit more questionable. Again, because he can have the hands he's representing a lot. And there aren't a lot of, I mean, they're pure bluffs that we're ahead of, but for a lot of the reasons I used to justify the previous call, this was probably a bad call. I have a lot of trouble thinking that was a good call, and we may have been better off just calling instead of check raising there even. Okay, we won some money with aces. So those were just, well, two of them they were all pretty standard. We basically raised and didn't fold. And that's often the right way to play aces. So, yeah, had a short set go all in on us, and then some hands where we got folds. And then let's look at some of the biggest losers. We didn't have any really big losing hands, so that's always nice. The biggest one was this king-queen, where we went ahead and continuation bet on the flop, and when we had two overs and the gut shot. And here again, I was thinking he could have draws, but I was mostly putting him on a flush draw, which I thought would play differently than he did. When you hit the river, it's hard to let it go because we check the turn, because we've pretty much stated we don't have anything here. So I think he's able to bet a lot on that river. I think any 10 is likely to bet that river. I don't think it was a horrible call. I don't think a fold is a horrible line there either. Let's see. The ace-7 suited hand, where we just tried to make a play on a guy that had limped, and it didn't work. Notice we did that a few times. People who would come in pre-flop posting, we tried to pick them off, and then we were met with resistance and didn't back down soon enough. That's actually what happened here too. And then the rest are just hands where we, c-bet and had to fold. Like the queen's on an ace board, and the jack's on, I guess, an ace board as well. Yeah, we didn't even, we played that different, but those I'm okay with the medium pot hands pretty routinely. Unless I see spots where I can make more, and I didn't specifically note any, so I'm not going to spend the time going through on the video. Anyway, this is Jeffrey Blake again, signing off.